The Xantharian archives stretched across 17 levels beneath the crystalline surface of their homeworld, housing the collective knowledge of 43 civilizations. Scholar Vex Thule had spent the last 2 centuries within these halls, his 4 eyes scanning ancient texts while his tentacles delicately turned pages that had survived the rise and fall of empires. Today, like every day for the past 50 years, he stood before the eternal paradox. The artifact floated in its containment field, a perfect sphere of unknown material, its surface covered in shifting symbols that defied comprehension. The greatest minds of the galaxy had attempted to decipher its secrets. The mathematical prodigies of Kepler-7 had fed its patterns into quantum computers. The telepathic collective of the minds had tried to commune with its essence. Even the ancient AIs of the core worlds had declared it unsolvable. Still nothing? Asked Dr. Kethmar, her carapace clicking as she approached. The insectoid scholar carried a steaming cup of synthesized nutrients, her compound eyes reflecting the artifact's subtle glow. The symbols continue to shift in patterns that suggest meaning, but every mathematical model fails, Vexthul replied, his translator rendering his species' harmonic language into galactic standard. I've begun to suspect it may be more art than science. That was when the humans arrived. The delegation consisted of 3 adults, Ambassador Sarah Chen, Dr. Marcus Webb from Earth's Xenolinguistics Department, and Professor Elena Vasquez, a specialist in ancient algorithms. They walked with the characteristic confidence that had made humanity both respected and feared since their emergence onto the galactic stage barely 2 centuries ago. We appreciate the opportunity to study the paradox, Ambassador Chen said, her words crisp and efficient. Our researchers have reviewed your data transmissions. What the assembled scholars didn't notice was the small figure partially hidden behind Dr. Webb's legs. 8-year-old Emma Webb had been meant to stay with the diplomatic childcare staff, but had quietly slipped away when her father became absorbed in the artifact's glow. The human scholars set up their equipment with impressive efficiency. Dr. Webb deployed resonance scanners while Professor Vasquez initialized pattern recognition algorithms that made even the Xanthari computational system seem primitive. They worked for 6 hours, achieving the same result as every previous attempt. Fascinating data that led nowhere. Emma, meanwhile, had been sitting cross-legged on the archive floor, watching the artifact with the intense focus only children could muster. While the adults filled the air with technical jargon and theoretical frameworks, she had been quietly observing how the symbols moved, noting which ones appeared more frequently, and how their colors shifted in relation to each other. It's pretty, she announced during a momentary lull in the scholarly discussion. The various researchers paused, suddenly remembering the child's presence. Ambassador Chen looked mortified. Emma, you shouldn't be here. Where's Ms. Rodriguez? She's reading her tablet, Emma replied matter-of-factly, then pointed at the artifact. But look, it's trying to tell us something happy. Dr. Vexthul's tentacles curled with what his species considered polite confusion. Happy? Child, this is a mathematical construct of immense complexity. No, it's not math, Emma said, standing up and brushing dust from her small jumpsuit. It's a story, see? She pointed to where certain symbols clustered together. Those are the characters. And that swirly bit, that's showing how they feel. The gathered scholars exchanged glances that ranged from amused to patronizing. Professor Vasquez knelt down to Emma's level, her voice gentle but dismissive. Sweetheart, sometimes patterns can look like stories, but this is actually… Can I show you? Emma interrupted, pulling a worn box of crayons from her pocket. I always carry these. Mom says creativity is important. Before anyone could stop her, Emma had pulled out a piece of paper from her father's notebook and begun to draw. Her small hands moved with surprising confidence, recreating the symbols she had observed. But instead of trying to replicate their exact forms, she drew them as simple stick figures, using different colors to represent the emotional tones she perceived in their shifting hues. What emerged on the paper was indeed a story, a simple tale of friendship between different beings, illustrated with the innocent artistry that only children possessed. Blue figures representing sadness transforming to yellow figures of joy, red symbols of conflict resolving into purple harmony. This one is lonely, Emma explained, pointing to a blue figure at the edge of her drawing. But then these ones become friends with it, and they're all happy together. Scholar Vexthul's eyes widened as recognition dawned. The child had identified something they had all missed. The symbols weren't mathematical formulae or linguistic constructs. They were emotional representations, a form of empathetic communication that required intuition rather than analysis. "By the 7 moons," Dr. Kethmar whispered. "She's reading the emotional resonance patterns." Emma looked up from her crayon drawing.
"Oh, is that what it's called?"
"I just thought they looked lonely and wanted to be understood." As the scholars watched in amazement, Emma approached the containment field. The artifact's symbols began to shift more rapidly, as if responding to her presence. She held up her simple crayon drawing, stick figures in bright primary colors depicting themes of friendship and understanding. The artifact pulsed once brilliantly and its surface cleared. Where complex shifting symbols had defied comprehension for millennia, a simple message appeared in every language known to the assembled scholars. "Thank you for understanding. We only wanted to share the story of how different beings can be friends. The eternal paradox had been created by a long-extinct species as a message of hope, a children's story encoded in empathetic resonance patterns, designed to be understood not through intellectual analysis, but through the emotional intuition that scholars often forgot in their pursuit of complex solutions." Emma Webb, armed with nothing but crayons and the unguarded heart of childhood, had solved what 43 civilizations could not. She had remembered what the adults had forgotten. Sometimes the most profound truths are also the simplest ones. As news of the breakthrough spread across the galaxy, philosophers and scientists began to reconsider the value of approaching the unknown with wonder rather than just wisdom. And in archives throughout known space, a new field of study emerged, one that recognized that understanding wasn't always about having the most sophisticated tools, but about maintaining the capacity for joy and connection that came so naturally to the young. The human child's crayon drawing was preserved alongside the galaxy's greatest treasures, a reminder that sometimes the most advanced civilizations could learn from the simplest perspectives.